Shalom. Thank you again to my mother, Reva Friedman, my father, Marvin Friedman, my brother, Sam, my aunts, Gail and Zelda, my uncle, Bob, my dad's good friend, Pete Cirolia, who made a trek to get here, and all the, most importantly, my wife, Rebecca, and children, Madeline and Ariel. Rebecca and my children really have been a huge support through the whole journey, so thank you. And also just thank you to all the colleagues, teachers, friends, everyone that made the effort to be here. Rabbis, everyone. Imagine you're a chaplain in the hospital and you knock on the door of a patient's room. Inside, there's a young woman suffering from Crohn's disease, a chronic inflammatory bowel disease that affects the lining of a person's digestive tract, and it's quite painful. She's yelling in pain and kicks you out of the room. I was working as a chaplain at a hospital when this happened, and so I write down the room number, and I make a note to return to visit this patient another time when she's hopefully feeling better. I return another day, knock on the door, and she's in the internal bathroom of her room. She calls out, "Who is it?" I say, "Hello, it's Chaplain Kevin." She responds, "I'm Jewish." That's code for go away, because the word chaplain still has this connotation of not Jewish, and she was afraid or whatever. And I say, "I'm Jewish too." She says, "I'm coming right out." She comes out, she sits down on the bed, and she says she's tracing her family roots, and her grandfather had a number on his arm, a tattoo the Nazis put on him during the Shoah, during the Holocaust. And she says, "I'm looking into my background." And she says, "Okay, chaplain." She looks me right in the eye, and she says, "What's Judaism?" I almost fell down. I couldn't call a timeout. I had to respond to her and say something. I'm going to tell you what I said in a moment, but I'd like everyone, there's a piece of paper underneath the purple paper. Take a moment on the first sheet of paper to just please write down for 30 seconds what you would say, and for our brothers and sisters here from different faith traditions, what you would say about your own faith tradition. And for people on the side, there's plenty of paper. I really want to try to get as many people involved. Grab a piece of paper. Someone share a sheet. And so take 30 seconds to just write down what you would say to a person as they're sitting in the bed and they ask you, "What is Judaism?" And put your name on the bottom. Mom, here, pass this. Here, Louis, pass this to people. Mom, write yours. Good. All right. Put your name on the bottom. Put your name. Ari, write yours. Bless you. When you're finished, please pass your papers up towards the front this way. And make sure write your name on it too. Thank you. Morty, can you help collect? Could you help collect if people are not passing it forward? Thank you. Thank you. So as everybody's passing them up, so I'm just going to read two beautiful, oh, this is perfect. This is just right there. Thank you. So I wish I could read them all, but so two, giving, and one other one, it is a tradition of belief and practice that connects Jews across time and space with each other and with God. And so I've been traveling around parts of all of Israel and parts of the United States, and it won't surprise a lot of you that I would get into discussions with people on buses in Israel and ask them this question. And God willing, I'm going to try to publish a small calendar with these kind of quotes. So if anyone doesn't want theirs in there, come and see me, or we could redact a name or change a name. I told her, what you just did is Jewish. Because we asked questions in an effort to learn. We ended up getting into a very long discussion about the Parsha and her desire to visit Israel and her curiosity to learn about birthright. And as I've learned as a hospital chaplain and doing hospice clinical pastoral education this semester, as we sit and are present to journey with others, we learn so much about ourselves as well. We learn so much about ourselves. The questions that this patient asked me was massive, and perhaps one thing that triggered me with this patient was her curiosity, her desire to ask questions, her desire to learn. And this tapped into my own curiosity and desire to ask questions. So I want to talk about two ideas today. The first one is the importance generally of asking questions and of cultivating curiosity and lifelong learning and this process of spiritual and moral growth. And two, specifically, my yearning for learning, this self-growth via Musar, character development, and a view of this week's Parsha, Miketz, through a Musar lens, illustrating Joseph's work on his own character trait of compassion vis-a-vis how he acts with his brothers. So number one, generally curiosity and lifelong learning. So many of you know Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, one of the giants of our generation, lives in Jerusalem and Tekoa in Israel, had been sending ambassadors to Highland Park, New Jersey for many years, and I would help them, and it was a real honor to not only help them, but also to meet Rabbi Steinsaltz on a couple of times. And he signed my 13-Petaled Rose book. I call it Red Bull for the Neshama. And he signed it, and he wrote two words in it. He wrote, Lilmod u'lilamed, learn and teach. And so what I want to propose today is, we have continuing legal education, CLE, for attorneys, and I want to propose a CNN, and not the CNN with Anderson Cooper that we watch on TV, but a CNN, a continuing neshama nourishment that we use to facilitate our Jewish journey and our learning, but also to nourish the souls that we come into contact with on a continuing basis. Perhaps another way to enter into the question of what is Judaism is to ask what branch of Judaism speaks to you at this moment, or what are you curious to learn more about? So on that second piece of paper, we're just going to take 30 seconds to just write down, and this one you're keeping, you're not passing this up, to just write down for 15 seconds or 30 seconds a branch that you're curious to either learn more about, or a branch of Judaism that's given you strength. So for me, one of these branches of Judaism that has piqued my curiosity has been the practice of Musar, with its very practical emphasis on character development. Musar means instruction or correction, and in modern Hebrew, ethics. Historically, the movement began in 19th century Lithuania, but was deeply shaped by the mystics in the 16th century who tried to integrate theology and ethics. And essentially the question of how do I personify in my actions this idea of being created in God's image. The practice of Musar has the goal of working on midot, or character traits, such as humility, patience, gratitude, compassion, order, silence. But the goal is to strive towards attaining a balance, towards working on each trait to be a better partner, be a better parent, friend, and overall human being. In short, the goal is to try to work on being the best mensch that we could be. The study is set forth in the context of you get a chavruta partner, a study partner, you sometimes work with a larger vod or a community of students, and you work pretty much one character trait at a time. Speaking of branches, in the mystical tradition, Yosef is associated with Yesod, understood as a tree that brings forth righteousness in the world. And so as we enter into Parsha Miketz, we pick up with Joseph rising to power as he's appointed the ruler of Egypt. A famine spreads through the region and food can only be obtained in Egypt. 10 of Joseph's brothers come to buy grain, but Binyamin stays home. Joseph recognizes his brothers, who he hasn't seen since they threw him in the pit and sold him into slavery, but he pretends not to know them. The brothers do not recognize him. Joseph accuses them of being spies and insists that they bring Binyamin to prove who they say they are. He basically continues this charade. The brothers return with Binyamin, and this time we see a change of heart, and Joseph treats them with compassion. The verse in Miketz, it's 43:30, is as when Yosef sees Binyamin, when they bring him back, the next verse says, "Vayamaher Yosef ki nimcheru rachamav el achiv, vayivakesh livkot vayavo hachedera vayevk shama." So Joseph rushed because his compassion for his brother had been stirred, and he wanted to weep, so he went into the room and he wept there. Rashi quotes the Talmud in Sota 36b and provides a very poignant dialogue back and forth between Joseph and his brother Binyamin. And it goes something like this. Joseph asks Binyamin, "Do you have a brother from your mother?" Binyamin says, "I had a brother, but I don't know where he is." Joseph says, "Do you have any sons?" Binyamin said, "I had 10. Joseph says, "Well, new. What are their names?" Binyamin said, "Bela, Becher," and he proceeds to list them. Joseph asks, "What are the nature of these names?" Binyamin said, "They are all named because of my brother," referring to Yosef and the troubles that befell him. So basically, and then he goes through methodically on each of the names. Joseph's emotional display clearly illustrates his Musar work on the character trait of Rachamim, of compassion. He's come a long way from Parshat Vayeshev in the days of his youth, when he told his brothers about the dream where they were binding sheaves in the field and their sheaves bowed down to Joseph. We may understand the root of compassion, Rachamim, as Rechem, Resh Chet Mem, which means womb. Part of compassion is trying to connect with another person. As Alan Moranis explains in Everyday Holiness, compassion is understood as the embodiment of strong ties of love, kinship, and tenderness that we feel for another, somehow connected to how a mother feels for a baby that she carries within her. We also see in our high holiday liturgy that the trait of compassion, Rachamim, is central in describing the divine. The Talmud in Chagiga 12a explains that compassion is one of the 10 elements through which the world was created. Compassion, Rachamim, is in the DNA of the world. The central place that compassion occupies is also emphasized in Tomer Devorah, the 16th century mystical Musar text by Rabbi Moshe Cordovero of Svat Israel, where he explains that V'harei ein savlan ve'anav ke'Eloheinu b'midat haketer shehi tachlit harachamim, meaning there is no one more patient or humble than our God in the highest emanation of the emanations of the cosmos, called Keter, which is beyond human comprehension, but it is described as being completely full of compassion. This same compassion or trait is understood in the mystical Kabbalistic understanding as representing the balance between chesed, loving kindness, and din, strict judgment. It's sort of akin to the constructive criticism that comes from a genuine place that a dear friend offers us sometimes. Not the yes, yes, yes of the chesed, and not the being too harsh of the din or the strict judgment, but that delicate balance in the middle. That is compassion. That is Rachamim. Returning to Joseph in our Parsha, a crucial point in his movement and his process of working on his compassion is turning from thinking about himself and his own ego to thinking about others. Sforno helps us understand this, the 16th century Italian commentator, by explaining that Joseph cried when he thought about the troubles of his father and his brothers. Vayivek Shama shechashav b'tzarat aviv ve'achiv. And he cried because he thought about the troubles of his fathers and brothers. As Rabbi Ira Stone would explain, Joseph was bearing the burden of the other in that moment. Not just thinking about himself, but bearing the burden of the other. A 15th century German book of ethics called Sefer Hamidot, the book of character traits called Orchat Tzadikim, later explains this same verse, Nichmeru Rachamav, that Joseph's compassion was stirred, and says, Vara'ui lemaskil, shetiyeh midat harachamim v'hachanina tkua v'nimset b'libo kol hayamim. That it is fitting for a wise man that the attribute of chesed, of this, or I should say rachamim, this compassion and mercy, it should always be embedded in our heart. We also see in this week's Parsha that while Joseph has come a long way, he has a long way to go. He still has a pretty long way to go. He plants a silver goblet in Benjamin's bag. He continues this charade of pretending not to know his brothers and does not reveal his, spoiler alert, doesn't reveal his identity until next week. A 19th century psychological commentator on the Torah called the Tzvi taught that on this same verse, Ki nichmaru rachamav el achiv, b'ma shelo yechol lehitvadea lo, v'gam yada ki mechayevhu od letza'aro b'devar hagavia. That Joseph's his mercies were stirred because he couldn't admit, he couldn't stop himself, that he knew he had to continue to trouble them further. And with all of his progress, he still had significant work to do because he couldn't, in the moment, he couldn't stop. He knew he had to continue to cause some tsuras, some troubles to his brothers, and it was going to play out in planting the goblet in Benjamin's bag. Perhaps this reminds us that us, like Joseph, we are also in process, that we have to work on our own character traits, such as compassion. And as I close, Rabbi Danny Nevin, for me, was a beautiful illustration, perhaps, of compassion today. When he wrote the beautiful remarks about the passing of Rabbi Neil Gilman, he mentioned that there was a deep and true friendship between Rabbi Neil Gilman and Rabbi Joel Roth. That although the two of them disagreed about almost everything, they were often found sitting together for lunch. I was very, very moved by this. When I shared this with Rabbi Morty Schwartz, he said, really, God willing, this shouldn't be such a remarkable thing. This should be what happens every day. And he's right. So my prayer for us is that, there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn. God willing, my blessing for all of us is to keep asking the questions like the patient with Crohn's disease did that day in the hospital. To keep learning and supplementing our education. Sign up for the Rabbinic Training Institute, but also supplement our education every day. We have to engage in this continuing neshama nourishment, this CNN, for ourselves as well as for others. And for whatever that branch of Judaism that speaks to you, cling to it. And if it doesn't work for you, maybe introduce someone else to it. Maybe it'll work for them. Help others on their Jewish journey as we also nourish ourselves. Help them find their branch, whether it's Musar, and whether we start with compassion, or whether it's something else that you wrote on the piece of paper. Whatever that may be, we clearly need more compassion in this world, more rachamim. And the world needs it. Each of us need it. And why don't we start now? Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah. Be'amad ivrach kirutei v'yamlich machlutei b'chayechonu v'yimechonu v'chayedecho beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kari v'yimru Amen. Yesh mei Rabbah mevorach l'lam u'mei almai. Yesh mei Rabbah mevorach l'lam u'mei almai. Yishtabach v'yipar v'yitram v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha brichu. Le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata tushbecha v'nechemata damiram be'amah v'yimru Amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Talmideon ve'al kol Talmidei Talmideon ve'al kol ma'an de'askim be'oraita divar ve'atra hedin ve'di chol atar ve'atar yehi lahon u'lachon shlomo rabba china ve'chista ve'rachamim ve'chayin arichin Mizonei Revichei Ufekarna Mi Karam Uvahondi Bishmaya Vimru Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel Vimru Amen. L'chaim. L'chaim.